Now I'm going to turn the service over to Liz, and may she bring us the word. Thank you for this time.
It's hard to believe how life can change in 1 week. But I'll tell you, the reason I can stand here and stand at all is exactly what Pastor spoke about. It's the power of grace. It's the power of God. We're all here because we know Ben. We know him from different places in life. My life changed drastically in 1997 when I was at a conference in Pennsylvania. And I was in the auditorium, and there's this man charging after me, running after me, and I thought, who is this crazy man? And he said, and I was on my way to the cafeteria with some friends. It was a big, called a Jewish Christian, I guess you'd call it a retreat. It was a big, wonderful conference of praise and worship. And I had just written a little book, and Ben must have gone to my table, and he wanted to ask me questions, and he kept following me. And I was in the lunch area, and he sat down. He didn't say, can I sit with you? He just sat down, plopped down, and started spieling. And I remember thinking, who are you? Go away. Well, and he said, I'm on my way to Okinawa, Japan. I'm a veterinarian. I'm in the U.S. Army. I'm going over there. And long story short, by the time he left 3 days later, and he gave me a hug goodbye, we had discussed our whole lives, and I knew there was something very unique about Ben. And when he hugged me goodbye, I heard in my ear, that's your husband. See, it's good to know your shepherd, because the Word of God says, my sheep hear my voice. And you really want to know whose voice you're listening to. And I thought, even though I heard God say that, I thought, okay, I'll never hear from him again. True to his word, Ben calls me the minute he lands on Japan soil. And we began a year of courtship or dating, whatever you want to call it, by email and by phone calls. And then when he came back to the States to Officer Advanced course, and we got married that summer. And what an adventure, as Dave said, because the funny thing about Ben is anytime you thought something was planned, be prepared to have it change, because, even our wedding day, everything just changed. But it's funny, we were married 14 years this past June, and I was thinking about it when I was thinking about Ben's life. And, when I went on the emails the other day to let people know, of course, what had happened, I was just looking. There were hundreds and hundreds of projects Ben was working on. Veterinary. He had patents ready to go in other countries. He had research projects to do. He had scientific journals. He loved Star Trek. He had stories to go, and he had, of course, he loved worship. So he had about 50 things going on at once. And the funny thing I used to say to Ben all the time is, Ben, I'm exhausted. He was like the Energizer bunny, and he would just go until he just fell. And my mom used to say he was like a tortoise in a shell. He used to like to lay on the floor and watch TV, and Mom said he looked like a turtle. He turned his head around and watched TV. And he reminded me of a bunny that just fell out, And that was how Ben lived his life. He was not going to let any grass grow under his feet. And I just want to say one more thing. It's impossible to put someone's life on a piece of paper, really, or what they mean. And his loss is irreplaceable. But I know for certain that I'm going to see him again. And I'm going to see my sister, my father, our loved ones. I'm going to meet my in-laws that I've never met. It's going to be wonderful. And I just know that that's why I'm standing, because God has assured me on that. This whole dynamic that brings us here today happened within 7 short weeks from diagnosis to departure. And it has been an incredible time of many, many things happening. But I just want to say on the day, I'm going to say 2 things that bring me great comfort now. 2 days before Ben went to be with the Lord, we went for a prayer at a gentleman who had a very well-known healing ministry, and we were sitting there, and we had communion, and we were just, being prayed over. And as Ben was being prayed over, I was just walking into the room, and I heard again that voice, that still small voice. I heard, I am Jesus, I am he who was dead and now I'm alive forevermore. That's from the Word of God. And I thought to myself, oh wow, Ben's going to get healed, And then the morning of the 18th, I had gone to get Ben some prescription, some pain medicine from his doctor, and I was out of the house, and again, I'm in the car, and I heard that still small voice, and that voice said, "Today you will see my salvation." And I thought, stand and see the salvation of the Lord, and that's from Psalms, that's from the Word of God, and I thought, oh, wow, Ben's going to be one of these miracles you see about on TV, you know, guy gets healed instantly. And of course, the night he passed away, I understood God had a different kind of healing. God had a permanent healing. And I want to tell you something very precious. I want to leave you with this memory. When Ben passed away suddenly, it was, thank God, it was merciful. It was very quick. His heart stopped. It was very quick. And I continued to pray over him because I asked the doctors and nurses if I could be alone with my husband. And I was praying over him until the pastors came, and we all prayed, believing God, because God can. God, there's enough power and faith to raise someone from the dead, and the Lord let me know that. But when I was praying over Ben, I tell you, I heard his voice, and I heard, this is exactly how I heard it. I heard, "It's so beautiful up here. I'm flying." I heard that, and it was like a light bulb went off, like somebody opened up a TV screen, and I saw two huge angels, and they were holding Ben's hand, and they were going up. That's what I saw. And I heard the Lord say, he said, "Liz," he said, "I gave my son a choice. My children always have choices." And he saw, and Dean, you need to hear this. I heard the Lord say, he saw the holy city. He saw the New Jerusalem. And he saw me. And he's with me. And loving every minute of it. You can be at peace. And when you hear that, you know it's going to be all right. So that's what I'm left with. The knowing that Ben is forever in joy. And I'm going to finish my race and carry on this wonderful legacy and look forward to being with him at God's time. So we don't grieve, as the gospel says, as those who have no hope. We have hope. So that's Ben.
I'm Hetty, Ben's oldest sister, and 5 Cassutto kids who always were together, strive to be together, and now we're -1. I never really expected to be the oldest sister and lose my baby brother first. That's not supposed to happen that way. But as we all know, God has other plans. I just wanted to tell you a little bit about my brother Ben. As the pastor so aptly described him, he is the most enthusiastic, bubbly person you would ever want to meet. When Ben comes into a room, Ben comes into a room. There is no doubt about it that your brother is in the house. He will open his arms wide like this and give you that big hug. And he will always say, "Do you have any coffee with whipped cream?" Lots of bagels and lots. I was really hungry when I got here. You got anything, Hetty? And of course, we always did. Gatherings at my house were usually holidays or other times. I was glad I haven't moved in the last 30-some years, so we were always in Reisterstown, and he knew that our home was his home. Holidays, just to come over and watch a movie or socialize or kibitz with the family, that's what our house was like. There was always music. There was always food. There was always something going on, and as my kids lovingly called it, it's the Cassutto Fest party. The last Cassutto Fest we had was just 2 or 3 weeks ago when Ben was done with his 1 radiation round of treatment. We had family from the Netherlands. We had the best time ever. His friends came. Chris, who we loved like a brother, came and all got to schmooze with us, visit, have a wonderful time. And Ben was bound and determined to make this last Cassutto Fest. Back in the old days when Ben was a young man, he would always bring his guitar and we always sang. You had to have the Cassutto kids to sing something, whether it was an old Crosby, Stills and Nash song or one of my mom and dad's old hymns, we would get together and sing. Like Liz said, when Ben wanted to watch a favorite movie, he plotzed on the floor, and I always picture Ben on the floor with a pillow, saying, "You got any Star Trek on that we can watch?" And guaranteed, if the Ravens were playing that week, he would call me and say, "What time's the game?" And we would always say, "Ben, you got a TV guide? You got somewhere you can look at?" No, I want to call you and ask you because you are the big sister and you know everything. How did the Orioles do today? What did they? I said, "Ben, did you look? Did you watch the sports?" "Well, they weren't playing in Salisbury. They didn't show it here for whatever reason." He would come, he would call and ask us, "How's the game? How did it go?" And if they played terrible, he would dissect the game, every play, and criticize them. Or compliment them if they did better. The very last phone conversation I had with Ben the day before he passed away was about the last Ravens game. Not this one, the one before where they won but played terrible. And he didn't want to talk about how he felt. He didn't want to talk about going back to the hospital. He just wanted to kvetch about the bad Ravens defense. Little did he know it would get worse. But in any case, you might know that where he is, that it got worse. When Ben was a young man, he played music. He loved his guitar. He played drums. He was in the school musicals, and this love of school musicals and Broadway plays included being in Fiddler on the Roof, Pajama Game, Guys and Dolls, and in Jesus Christ Superstar. And he has passed this love of musicals on to his nieces and nephews. They are all proud to be in musical theater and drama. They play music. They get together. We all have this love of music in our family, and it's because of Ben, who got this from our parents. The enthusiasm that he had for life, I'm telling you, there was nobody like Ben who had this enthusiasm. He loved the love of art. He loved our home country of the Netherlands. Whenever we went to Holland for a visit, he begged me to bring back rice tafel or sambal or some spicy food or some Dutch cheese or something that you could only get over there, and I had to always remind him that you can't pass that through customs anymore. But we would try to get that for him if we could, but he was always happy to have that big rice table with the spicy food. And he's having that right now. He's having the best rice tafel you ever saw, with an extra helping of the spicy stuff. He had the fortune to travel with Liz and go to Holland in '99 and research my dad's book and spend time with his Dutch family. He got to go to Israel with his brother George, and he got to see everything that they wanted to see there that was in the Bible and walk those holy steps and take that trip to the Wailing Wall. He got to do that. That was something my mother wanted to do before she passed, but George and Ben got to do that together. God bless them. He got to research my dad's book in Holland and visit our family. And he always wanted to search for truth, justice, and the American way, just like Superman. He was upset with the way the pharmaceutical industry was handled, that it was all about the money. He used to tell me all the time, "Hetty, it's always about the money. Why aren't they doing the right thing?" And that is what Ben wanted to do. He wanted to make sure that people were always doing the right thing. Another funny part about Ben's personality was he wanted to be that big inventor who got that one marvelous thing that we all needed and can't live without. About 15 years ago, he said, "I have a computer. Why can't I just put the word Star Trek in and have it recorded without a tape so the tape doesn't wear out and the tape doesn't shut down?" And my wonderful husband said, "Ben, they have that. It's called TiVo." But Ben insists he thought of it first. And you know what? He probably did. And finally, having Ben meet Liz, you couldn't have had a better match made in heaven than Ben and Liz, or as we call them, Biz. There cannot be Ben without Liz. And there cannot be Liz without Ben, but unfortunately the sad truth is, that is the way it is. So Ben, who was our baby brother, our Linus, with the blanket, who loved to hear Linus on the Charlie Brown Christmas special recite the gospel. You cannot watch the Charlie Brown Christmas special without thinking of Ben, because Ben was that little boy with the blanket who preached the gospel. That was Ben. And he is with the Lord now. He's with Mom and Dad, and his life's work is done. And we'll miss him like crazy. It won't be Christmas without Ben, without us singing the Christmas songs, without doing that Carolyn Dutch. But we will see him again. Thank you.
I'm George Cassutto, Ben's twin brother. Much of what I had prepared has already been said, and will probably be said again. And that's a testimony to the veracity and the truthfulness of those things that you're hearing today. So, you know, just take it as it comes, and hopefully we'll all cherish Ben even more by hearing these things more than once. Well, I certainly want to thank Liz for this opportunity to share thoughts about my twin brother Ben. I also want to extend thanks to all who knew Ben in the many capacities of life that his life took for coming here and honoring him in this way. It may be cliche to say that we gather not to mourn, but to celebrate his life. But I want to celebrate the joy that he brought to each and every one of us through his sense of humor, his love for his fellow human beings, and for the compassion that he showed our non-human friends through his veterinary practice. We certainly do mourn Ben's passing as having taken place far too soon. And such a loss leads us to ask questions of spirituality, such as, why do bad things happen to good people? And as long as we are clothed in this mortal coil, there is no good answer. But for those of us who maintain a faith, and I see that strongly here today, that there is a life beyond this one, we can be comforted in the notion that Ben was spared needless suffering, that he is surrounded by loved ones who have gone before, and that we will all be reunited just as he is now in the presence of his parents, aunts and uncles, and loved ones who have preceded us in death. My guess is that some of you who may not be completely familiar with Ben's background may be asking yourself, Ben had a twin brother? Funny, he doesn't look like Ben. There is truth in that observation. But I am proud to say that Ben was and always will be my fraternal twin brother. We have 2 sets of twins in our family, 5 siblings total. My mom always quipped that she gave birth to 5 kids in 3 trips. And I always added that Ben was a wonderful womb-mate. Born first. The odds of such an arrangement, I understand, are 1 in 80 million. So, having 2 sets of fraternals. So, while I usually brag about myself in that way, we who knew Ben can certainly attest to the truth of that statement regarding him, and we've heard quite evidence that supports that theory. So Ben was, as one Facebook post put it, a gentle soul. And while he and I had some obvious differences, we have some notable similarities. Ben was a scientist at heart, and while I am a teacher of the social sciences, we both shared a love of science fiction. That's certainly one of the things, the recurring theme. Namely episodes of Star Trek, the TV show Star Trek, and the movies that followed. It became an annual tradition that we would watch remastered episodes of the original series when my kids, Grace, Gabe, and Glory, would visit Ben and Liz during our summer trips when we would come to the beach. So you can be sure that I love my brother deeply, and that his passing leaves me with a sense of loss that feels like part of me is gone. We will all cherish memories of Ben's unique nature, and we will cry tears of sadness, but we will also mingle them with tears of laughter, a notable Cassutto characteristic. We're going to cry tear bullets, as we say. All of us Cassutto siblings love to sing, as has already been said, and we sometimes sing hymns publicly and unabashedly. And if anyone has ever stood in a church pew with Ben, you know that Ben's voice often rang out above the rest of the congregation with little or no inhibition. And it was often incumbent upon me to say, "Land, Ben, land." high school and college years. And we share a love of such favorites as Jesus Christ Superstar and Fiddler on the Roof. And how appropriate that our blended heritage would basically be a Broadway review of those two shows. And so it will be hard to get through either of them now without thinking of Ben and how we enjoyed the gift of musical theater. So Ben resembled my father in many ways, certainly physically and in his ministry. And I took after my mother more physically and also in temperament. My parents had their spiritual mission after surviving the Holocaust, and that was to share the good news of the gospel with the Jewish people in America. And I live out their ministry as a teacher, like my mom. So Ben and his wife Liz, they are ministers. They were ministers to the Jews in their community. And as has also been noted, Ben revised my father's book, The Last Jew of Rotterdam. And that was a great achievement for him. And he and Liz continued my parents' ministry and their own ministry on their website, like Beacon Ministries. And Ben cared deeply about the salvation of all people, especially the nation and people that brought us the Messiah, Jesus Christ. And now we look to Liz, Ben's wife, to carry on that ministry. I'm sure there are aspects of Benjamin Henriquez Cassutto that I may not have mentioned. Others will mention them. And I'm sure as we recede from this moment in time, I will wish that I had mentioned. But I hope that he is looking down upon us right now, knowing that he was loved by everyone here. And I take comfort in the words of the hymn, "Be Still My Soul," which I will share if I get through it. I will speak them, sparing you my singing. Be still, my soul, though dearest friends depart, and all is darkened in the vale of tears. Then shalt thou better know his love, his heart, who comes to soothe thy sorrows and thy fears. Be still, my soul. Thy Jesus can repay from his own fullness all he takes away. Be still, my soul. The hour is hastening on, when we shall forever be with the Lord. When disappointment, grief, and fear are gone, sorrow forgot, love's purest joy restored. Be still, my soul, when change and tears are past. All safe and blessed, we shall meet at last. Now, I will close with a poem that I wrote for Ben about 30 years ago. And I don't think I ever shared it with him. It was right after we graduated from college. My parents had not yet passed away, and Ben and I were establishing our own lives as adults. And so it is appropriately entitled for Ben, my twin. Hey, Ben, whose voice I hear crackling over the miles. How's life been treating you? The twins already know. Ever since I made crying sounds from wet diapers and stolen toys, from when I read my first word and scribbled my name, those times we fought with the fury of armies and laughed together down high school halls. We learned to love music. Et nous parlons français ensemble. We would speak French together. Different as we are, our mother gave us simultaneous and equal births. We transformed competition into brotherly love. It's you and me, Ben. No matter how far or how long, we'll always share the birthday. I know that from other worlds we came together, one with another. We're part of a family that's strong and loving, and after our time, I'll see you again, wearing the bright, shining clothes of earthly experience. Thank you. And let me bring up my sister Carolyn.
Hi everybody, I'm Carolyn. I'm also one of twins, and there was a joke with both my brothers that if we were out and people saw us, they would say, hey, I would say, I'm Carolyn, and this is my twin, but we're not twins to each other. If I was out with my brothers. I'm going to make this kind of short. First, I want to commend the pastor on getting Ben just right. Ben had a bounce on the top of his toes. He also walked that way. He walked on the toes of his feet. He did that ever since he was little. And I, too, had one last conversation. Honey, how's your leg? Tell me about it. What are you doing about it? How's your cat Smokey? Had Brother Ben for advice. Whenever there was something wrong with my cat. And it's a surreal feeling knowing that this powerful force in our family has left us. But it's so comforting to know that we know where he is. I just want to share a little something. As you probably have now discovered, my mother was, I don't think the statistics were that great, George, 1 in 1 million. 1 in 100,000 moms have multiples, okay? And I want to share with you, not to be morbid, my mom lost a set of twin boys in 1957. They were not meant to be, but she had 3 girls, and she said, just like Babe Ruth pointed to the wall and said, I'm going to hit a home run over there, she said, I will have boys before I turn 30. On June 16, 1960, George and Ben Cassutto were born. My mother had just turned 29. She got it right. She predicted it because the Lord wanted it that way. My mother wanted boys. She wanted baseball, Boy Scouts, all that stuff, and she got it. They were born in Passaic, New Jersey, and I just have to say that we have our surrogate family from across the street in all those years in New Jersey sitting here, as many as could come. Our Fless family, our extended Cassutto family is here. The birth of our Fless family coincided with the birth of the Cassuttos, from the oldest to the youngest, so we have our parallel surrogate siblings here. And they all know Ben. They all know his spirit. Ben was a force to be reckoned with. My sister said it so wonderfully, when he entered a room, he was there. He knew it. But this was in a good way, because you fed off Ben's energy. I want to share one more thing. In April, Ben's lovely wife, Liz, could not accompany him to a speaking engagement in Columbia, Maryland. I live in Glen Burnie. Ben called me up. He said, Connie, would you be my Liz? I said, sure. I was honored. I couldn't believe I was geographically desirable also. But I was happy to do it. It was I believe it was on a Saturday. So Ben and I drove to Columbia together, and I was his schlepper, okay? I had to help schlep books, things, So Ben could, his mind could be easy. He could speak. I'd never heard my brother Ben speak. I told my parents' story in the Anne Arundel County schools where I live, in the public schools. But Ben was going to give his story to people who knew the message, but I'd never heard it Ben's way. I had never heard it Ben's way. And I thought, well, I tell this story. I'm going to just kind of hear the same old thing. Let me tell you something. My brother was a gifted speaker, gifted. And I did not know it as his sister. I sat, my heart is pounding, people. I sat riveted to the message I've heard since the time I was little, heard it told Ben's way, and it was like I was hearing it for the first time. I helped Ben schlep books as we sat at the table. I'm sure Liz knows what I'm talking about. And people came to him and said, Ben, this is incredible. Where can we get more? They're hungry for more. So the books were all there, And I was honored to be Ben's schlepper that day. But I also want to say one more thing is that I am so happy that Ben found Liz. Ben was in search of someone to, I don't want to say complete his life, but complement his life. And nobody could have complemented it better than Liz Nickel Cassutto. She is my sister. She will always be my sister, and I love her so much. Thank you, Liz. for being Ben's rock, and we will miss him, but I can't wait to see him again. Thank you.
I just want to thank you all for being here. We really appreciate everybody that came out. I also want to extend a thank you to the body here of Living Stones Church for opening their hearts to Ben and Liz and opening your hearts to us as a Cassutto family. Ben always spoke glowingly about his home church, Living Stones Church, and you were much loved by him. And I thank you for the support that you gave Ben and Liz during the last difficult 7 weeks. And your coming around Liz and being there for her puts our mind at ease as family that sometimes can't always be right there. She has family right there, and that's very, very valuable to us. And I just have one thing to remember about Ben, and that is that we went to see him, Dean and I, my son, we went to see him on the 27th of September. I had a sense of urgency that we needed to go and be with him while he was in Wilmington, undergoing radiation. We spent the afternoon together, just talking and having lunch as though everything were normal. And he spoke a lot about his testimony and things that he was very interested in, and one of them is the end times prophecies in the Bible. That is something that he had focused on that was very interesting to him, how the prophecies are fulfilled in the present day, the prophecies in the Old Testament. And one of the doctrines that he was really excited about was the rapture of the church before the coming tribulation, and that the believers would be taken out before the death and destruction of the end of the world. And this death and destruction, of course, comes prior to establishing the new heaven and the new earth, where everything will be in a perfect state. And so when Ben passed relatively suddenly, in spite of his condition, it just confirmed to me that Ben had been taken out before his coming tribulation in a personal way. He experienced his rapture, where God was merciful and spared him the tribulation of what normally happens to someone who's in that condition of stage 4 cancer, what that person would have to go through, and God spared him of that, and that God was very merciful in that way. I know the question comes up, well, if God is merciful, then why couldn't he have just spared Ben from cancer altogether? You know, why did he have to have this and die at a relatively young age? And you know, we don't really get the exact answer until we get to that glorified state where we know the way God knows everything. But I can tell you this, and that is that the condition that we live in now, the world that we live in now, is a world of evil and pollution, and we're not in a perfect state. And so all of us are going to suffer and die at some point, whether it's at 52 or 92. In the realm of eternity, it's not going to make that great a difference like it seems to us. And so until we get to that new heaven and new earth, there is all this evil that people have to suffer. And this is not something that Ben would want you to have to cause you to sway your faith. This is something that he would want you to use to confirm your faith, that God is there in those difficult times, like he was for Ben. And that's what I wanted to share with you. Thank you very much.
Shalom. Now, I know it doesn't say I'm going to say a few words, but I'm going to say a few words. Just two things I want to share with you. Although I didn't have the privilege and the blessing of living close to you guys, Ben would often call me up with questions. How do we do this? What should I do here? I want to do this music. I want to do that music. And typically the phone would ring and I'd go, hello? And he'd go, Dennis! So I just wanted you to know that Ben could enter a room by long distance. Second was the last time I saw Ben, which was, 3 or 4 weeks ago at Son of David congregation. Ben makes an annual trek to Son of David Congregation for the High Holy Days. But because of his health and the condition that he was in during the High Holy Days, he couldn't make it. So in Ben's way, he figured that better late than never. And so he showed up about 3 or 4 weeks ago. You could tell he was laboring. He was sweating profusely, but he was happy. And my last picture of Ben is that we honored him by carrying the Torah scroll around the sanctuary. He was in love with God's word, and he was in love with God. And even though I didn't get to spend a lot of time with my friend, my brother, I will miss him. The Kaddish is a prayer that links generation to generation of Jewish people. It's called the mourner's prayer, and it's the farthest thing from a mourner's prayer than you can imagine. It is a prayer of adoration of God. It is a prayer in awe of God. And it is a prayer of wonder and a prayer of praise. And I'd like to chant it for you in the Hebrew this morning, and then I'll read the English translation. And Liz and brother and sisters and immediate family, if you would stand during this college, and if you would allow me to intercede for you in praising God at this time of your grief. Yitkadam